All right, we have a Fox News alert. The attorney for Darren Wilson, that is the officer involved in the fatal shooting of Michael Brown, who was recently cleared by the grand jury, he has resigned from the Ferguson Police Department. And this is obviously a significant development. This is one of the things the protesters have said they wanted to have happen. He had been suspended with pay since the shooting that sparked all of those riots and obviously the violence that has occurred over the past couple of days there in Ferguson. I want to bring in Steve Olenek, an attorney and litigator, to talk about this right now. How big of a development is this in terms of the legal status for Darren Wilson going forward?
Well, I think in terms of Darren Wilson, I think what he had to do, he had to resign because he's trying to get the benefits associated to his employment. I mean, all those benefits that he would accumulate if he stayed for 20 years, I think this was all about leverage, and they did it in a tactful way because there was so much backlash. And quite frankly, where else was he going to get a job, Leland? I mean, he couldn't go back to the force.
Well, a lot of people brought that issue up. He couldn't get a job. There's been widely reported that he just married a woman who's pregnant with his child, another police officer who's there. More importantly, though, in the larger sense of this, how do you read this in terms of sort of letting some of the steam out of the pot that's become the pressure cooker in Ferguson? We heard from Mike Tobin earlier there are more demonstrations planned tonight. This seems to have been well engineered in terms of when this announcement came out.
Oh, it was well calculated. I think they had to. There was getting so much backlash. I mean, I deal with a lot of professional athletes. A lot of athletes have chimed in. There are a lot of people are disappointed. I think this was the right thing to do. And quite frankly, I think it had to be done, and it had to be done quickly and efficiently.
One of the things that's been discussed here going forward in terms of the legal situation in Ferguson, obviously you have the federal civil rights investigation by Eric Holder and the Justice Department. A lot of people say the burden of proof there would just be too high. But the other thing that has been discussed is a possible civil lawsuit by the Brown family for wrongful death. And in terms of how the case proceeds going forward, because the standard of proof in a civil case is so much lower, does the fact that he has resigned from the force mean anything? Does he still get the kind of protections from the union and all that he would have had he stayed on?
Yeah, he is. I mean, he probably right now there's some type of probably leverage in terms of the brokering of a deal, in terms of the immunity, in terms of what they're going to cover. I mean, legal costs are very expensive. And quite frankly, something like this had to be covered for them to actually get the deal as quickly as they did. So I tend to think that, yes, 100%. I think that something like this was done in a calculated manner to get a quick resolution for this.
Obviously, we've seen things so far be relatively peaceful there inside of Ferguson, at least today. One of the main points the protesters have asked for, one of their demands, was that Darren Wilson leave, the other being that the police chief be fired. Talk to me a little bit in terms of what the negotiations go on here, in terms of, do you fire someone? Do you ask them to resign? Do you give them some kind of severance package, which we may learn more about? Obviously, this just crossed in the past couple of minutes. How do those negotiations work in terms of a civil servant, which a police officer is, and the city itself?
Well, I think, from what I know, and I don't deal with this on a daily basis, but I will say this. It is a leverage. It is a negotiation in terms of who has the leverage and in terms of how many years would actually have to be paid out. But as of right now, I think that because the issue is getting so much attention, you need to squash this right away. So in terms of getting the best possible payout in a short period of time, I think you need to do it.
Quickly speaking, though, in terms of who would you rather represent as the legal situation goes forward, would you rather want to be Darren Wilson's defender as a litigator in some kind of civil wrongful death suit, or would you rather want to be on Michael Brown's parents' side as they try to go after not only conceivably Wilson, but also the Ferguson Police Department?
Oh, I would want to go after the police department. If I would want to defend and actually go out and advocate and really try to make a stance, because I think if you do that, you can make some valid points in terms of what happened and what wasn't done. But if you're really going to be proactive in terms of taking a side, I think that's the side I would take.
All right, Steve Olenek, an attorney and litigator, here to talk about this. We certainly appreciate it. We want to update our viewers on the breaking news. Darren Wilson, the police officer involved in the shooting in Ferguson, Missouri, who shot and killed Michael Brown, has resigned, according to his lawyer, effective immediately. August 9th was the shooting. Grand jury came back a couple of days ago. A lot of violence inside Ferguson. And today, as more protests are planned, nightfall in St. Louis, it's announced Darren Wilson has resigned. We'll be right back.